Generational talents don't come around often. In some sports, you might be lucky to see one every 2 or 3 decades. But in tennis, we got more than what we asked for with the big three all playing collectively at the same time. The trailblazer and the oldest of them, Roger Federer, retired 2 years ago. We then saw Andy Murray retire this summer. Andy was so good that he single-handedly turned the big three into the big four for a while, achieving 29 wins against them over the years. And now, we have Rafael Nadal drawing the curtain on an illustrious career. It's the end of an era, and let me say, everyone's feeling it. Reflecting on the announcement that Nadal made about 2 weeks ago, I decided to put together a truckload of reasons why we'll never see anything quite like him in the sport again. And I bet you're in for a shocker. It's 2004 and this 18-year-old kid has just beaten the number 2 player in the world at the Davis Cup. Everyone is going bonkers as Spain lifts the title. We knew the kid was good. After all, he turned pro at 14 and was punching far above his weight as a teenager. However, we had absolutely no idea how great he was going to be. The Davis Cup win marked a memorable moment in young Rafa's career, and no one was going to stop him from then on. Fast forward 2 decades later, and Nadal is going to retire at the same tournament after 22 Grand Slam titles, 209 weeks as world number 1 across 3 different decades, 36 Masters 1000s, 92 ATP titles, and 912 weeks, or a total of 18 years in the top 10. The sheer volume of Rafa's statistical accomplishments on clay and on the other surfaces is out of this world. But you already knew that, didn't you? That's why I want to focus a bit more on his impact on the tour. How crazy is it that Nadal is actually retiring this year? Of course, we expected it eventually, but it still hurts. Looking back at his career, I would argue that there's never been a more consistent player when it comes to emotional stability and how he handled his business on and off the court. It didn't matter whether Rafa was having a bad day or not. You basically knew what you were getting from an encounter with him. He was always classy and humble. This consistency of character is something that we may never see again. How do you not break a racket once throughout your career? No cursing, no temper tantrums, like not even a slip-up once? That's not human, is it? I've never seen such discipline. Even down to his rituals, the way he arranged his water bottles and all that. Despite playing with a lot of emotion, Nadal never once channeled his emotional energy in the wrong direction. And don't even get me started on how he handled fans, ball boys, the press, and those working on the tournament grounds. If you asked anyone who came in close contact with Nadal, you'll get positive reviews from everyone that regardless of who you were, he treated you with the utmost respect. Here's a typical example of how Nadal greets a tournament staff member almost every time.
Thank you very much for everything. Thank you so much.
Also, being able to maintain good friendships with his rivals despite an intense rivalry was something that was truly special to witness. He literally had a bromance with Federer and also didn't have a bad relationship with Novak either. On top of his consistency of character was a gladiatorial spirit that no one has ever seen in the world of sports. The way he imposed himself on you from the locker room to the court outside was unreal. It's easy to place the tag of most competitive, most intense, or warrior on Rafa, but it doesn't even do justice to just how good he was. This guy fought against his body and against his opponents, and he still came out on top most of the time. For starters, Rafa's career could have been over even before it started. As a teenager, Nadal was diagnosed with a rare chronic foot condition called Müller-Weiss syndrome. It's literally a degenerative disease, meaning that it gets worse over time. As you would expect, it causes a lot of pain and inflammation. And when you remember that Rafa's extreme physicality only made it worse, you can't help but wonder how Nadal managed to play for so long. It literally was a miracle. Nadal managed to avoid surgery on the foot until 2021, which only made his 2022 Grand Slams all the more impressive. But his injury-prone body came at a cost nonetheless. Excluding the 2024 season, these are all the slams Nadal didn't play because of an injury. 2003 Roland Garros due to an elbow injury, 2004 Roland Garros due to left ankle discomfort, 2004 Wimbledon due to that same left ankle, the 2006 Australian Open due to a left foot injury, 2009 Wimbledon from discomfort in both of his knees, the 2012 US Open due to a left knee issue, the 2013 Australian Open due to that same left knee and also a stomach virus, the 2014 US Open due to a right wrist injury, 2016 Wimbledon due to a left wrist injury this time, 2021 Wimbledon and the US Open that same year also due to a left foot injury, And in 2023, he missed Roland Garros, Wimbledon, and the US Open with a nagging hip injury. Remember, these are the only tournaments he missed. How about we talk about the ones that he had to retire from mid-tournament? Here, I have them on the screen. The 2010 Australian Open quarterfinals, when he retired during the third set versus Andy Murray due to a right knee issue. 2016 Roland Garros in the third round, when he suffered a walkover loss against Marcel Granollers due to a left wrist injury. The 2018 Australian Open quarterfinals, when he retired during the fifth set versus Marin Cilic. The 2018 US Open semifinals, when he retired after a second set against Delpo due to a right knee issue. And the 2022 Wimbledon semifinal walkover versus Nick Kyrgios due to an abdominal injury. And what about the tournaments where Nadal picked up an injury and was compromised? The 2007 US Open fourth round when he lost to David Ferrer, the 2009 US Open semifinals where he lost to Delpo, the 2011 Australian Open quarterfinals when he lost to David Ferrer again due to a left foot injury this time. In the second round at Wimbledon in 2012, he lost to Lucas Rosol due to a left knee injury. In 2014, the Australian Open final when he lost to Stan Wawrinka, the 2016 US Open fourth round where he lost to Luca Pouille with a left wrist injury. In the 2021 Australian Open quarterfinals, he lost to Stefanos Tsitsipas after dealing with a back injury. 2021 in the Roland Garros semifinals when he lost to Novak Djokovic, again with that nagging left foot popping up. And in 2023 in the Australian Open second round, where he lost to Mackenzie McDonald. Again, these are just Grand Slams alone. Nadal had to deal with all sorts of physical problems that you probably wouldn't even wish on an enemy. He had by far the most injuries out of any member of the Big Three, and really, no one gave him a chance to make it that far. Sometimes, when I feel bad as a fan that Rafa has to retire, I immediately count my blessings, knowing that it's a miracle he even managed to play for this long in the first place. Another reason many of us see Nadal as the greatest fighter and the most tenacious in the sport had to do with his mentality. He was one of the most difficult players to get off his rhythm, and he was all about grinding you down like a raging bull. You could see the willpower and intent behind every shot that he hit. From the first point to the last point, there was almost no difference or significant dip in the quality of shots that he hit, as long as he was healthy. On top of the character consistency and fighting spirit was a unique style of play that will never be replicated. With less than 10% of the world population being left-handed, we don't get to see too many lefties on tour, let alone doing something even close to what Rafa was capable of. He redefined forehand topspin. Those with real-life experience who played against Rafa explained that it was the most exhausting thing to do, especially with those heavy loopy balls that just kept coming back at you.
That's the shot he's played well, that back.
And with the high margin for error on that shot, Rafa hardly missed. Plus, the balls usually landed outside of the opponent's strike zone, especially on the backhand, so even when they tried to hit back, they just weren't going to inflict as much damage to him as he was doing to them. But in addition to the forehand genius was an exceptional skill set that included an underrated net game, the ability to keep slices very low, impeccable footwork even with a degenerative foot condition, and a solid backhand to say the least. Nadal's explosiveness out of the corners, his speed and agility shouldn't have even been possible in the first place because of the condition he suffered from. Even as he got older, we saw Rafa's killer instinct get sharper, especially after teaming up with Carlos Moya in 2016. As his movement began to slow down, Nadal adjusted his game tactically and began to go for broke early on in order to shorten points. With this tactic, he was able to win 5 more slams and reach 2 more Grand Slam finals between 2017 and 2019. I recently made a video on the GOAT debate where I listed the criteria for picking your GOAT. The video was mostly between Roger and Novak, but any real tennis fan knows that Rafa was right up there, so much so that an argument could be made for him. But we aren't doing that. That's not the point of this video. But looking at his stats and unreal numbers even outside of clay, his cultural impact, skill set, his peak between 2008 and 2013, having to play both Federer and Novak in their absolute primes, and how he was at the center of 2 of the most prolific tennis rivalries, it's almost impossible not to have the utmost respect for Nadal. He was Federer's most difficult opponent, and at the same time, Novak's biggest rival too. So when I see people falling into the trap of limiting most of Rafa's achievements to clay alone, it doesn't make much sense because when you look at what he's achieved on other surfaces, you have enough to build another all-time great player. Rafa reached the Wimbledon final 5 consecutive times between 2006 and 2011. How many all-time greats managed to do that? Take away Rafa's 14 Roland Garros titles and you would probably still have an all-time top 10 player. Rafa's 8 non-clay slams are the same number as Agassi's entire Grand Slam portfolio, and just like Agassi, Jimmy Connors and Lendl also won 8 slams in total. These guys are considered all-time greats. In fact, the only players to have more non-clay Grand Slams than Nadal are Djokovic, Federer, and Sampras, which means that Nadal is possibly the fourth greatest non-clay player of all time. And if not for the other members of the Big Three, Rafa would have had many more grass and hardcourt slams. Nadal also won 29 ATP titles off the clay, 10 of which were Masters 1000 titles, which again is Hall of Fame worthy. Nadal beat Federer in a Wimbledon final and then defeated Novak twice in the US Open finals. And remember, both Novak and Federer were a lot closer to their primes then. So tell me, how do you take away someone's best surface, his best weapon, and yet he still goes on to achieve so much? I don't know about you, but to me, this is just something that's incredible to see. And when it comes to surface mastery, Nadal on clay was far more dominant than Federer on grass or Novak on hard courts. Nadal was so good that facing him on clay at Roland Garros was the ultimate test in tennis, and maybe even in sports as a whole. I'm not going to go as far as saying we should imagine if there were 2 clay court slams, or talk about what Rafa could have achieved if he wasn't injured so many times, because according to the man himself,
If doesn't exist.
Being the most dominant player on the hardest surface is something that brought with it a number of records that aren't going to be broken anytime soon. An 81 consecutive match-winning streak on clay from April 2005 to May 2007, 12 Barcelona Open titles, 11 Monte Carlo titles, and 10 Rome trophies. I'm sure you know about the other records. Rafa didn't get the ending that he wanted, according to Uncle Tony. He probably would have liked to play a bit longer, however, it was almost impossible at this point. Rafa struggled with injuries for most of the last 2 years, and every time he stepped on the court, you knew he was battling his body, perhaps even more than his opponent. This year, Nadal had high hopes for Roland Garros and the Olympics, but ended up facing the worst draw possible for a player on his last legs. Zverev in the first round at the French Open, and Novak at the Olympics. Tough luck. And even when Rafa wanted to play more tournaments, his body just couldn't hold up to it anymore. The movement was already severely compromised, and even at that, he still managed to beat good players like Alex de Minaur, Cam Norrie, and Navone this year. But while it may not be the perfect ending for him, Rafa still has the chance to go out in style at the Davis Cup finals in Spain this November. Just as long as his body holds up for one more competition. The other day, I enjoyed watching a competitive second set between Nadal and Djokovic at the Six Kings Slam, but I couldn't help but feel a lot of nostalgia seeing the last dance between tennis's greatest rivals. You could also see how much respect Djokovic has for Nadal from the things he said about the Spaniard.
I have the utmost respect for you. Incredible athlete, incredible person. You know, the rivalry has been incredible, really, and has been very intense.
Looking at the Big Three as a unit, we have to be so grateful for everything they brought to the sport. I mean, how lucky are we to see the 3 best players of all time all competing in the same era against each other? Rafa, Roger, and Novak changed the game forever. Rafa and Roger played 40 times, Rafa and Djokovic 60 times, Djokovic and Federer 50 times, a total of 150 high-quality matches over the last 2 decades from 3 generational talents, all with completely different styles of play and personalities. This might never happen again. Just take a look at how they dominated everyone. It shouldn't be normal or taken for granted. In the future, if my kids asked me about the Big Three, this would probably be my reaction. But seriously, that's how much impact they've had on all of us as tennis fans. The greatest era in the history of tennis is now coming to an end. Novak is still going strong and might have 1 or 2 slams in him, and even with Sinner and Alcaraz trying to dominate everyone, Novak continues to play at a high level. And he's even told us that he isn't done just yet. Roger is still very much around on tour and shows up like a boss every now and then for tournaments or tennis-related activities. For Rafa, we already know how profound his last dance at the Davis Cup is going to be. It's going to be a full circle moment. With Alcaraz leading the Spanish charge, Nadal, who has a 29-1 record in singles at the event, has a real chance to go out with a bang. The team captain David Ferrer might decide to pair Nadal and Alcaraz in doubles, or pair one of them with doubles specialist Marcel Granollers. We don't know if Nadal will play singles yet, but regardless of how it goes down, I'm pretty sure it's going to be an emotional moment. I came across Rafa's autobiography many years ago, and it's probably a good time to go back and reread some parts of it, because there were a lot of insights about Rafa as a person. We got to know that despite being fierce on the court, he still had his own insecurities and doubts. and fear seemed to be a major driver for him. The book focused a lot on the 2008 Wimbledon final and to a lesser extent the 2010 US Open final, which is understandable because it was published in 2011. Truth be told, Rafa was a relentless competitor, yet a true gentleman to the core. Even when he beat some of your favorite players, you couldn't even get mad. You just sat back in awe. And although he's now closing a chapter, Rafa is going to remain an inspiration to millions of people all over the world, and his impact is only going to get bigger and bigger. Beyond his 3-meter steel statue at Roland Garros, beyond the Barcelona Open Center Court renaming, even beyond thousands of fans naming their kids Rafael, Nadal will certainly go down as one of the greatest sportsmen ever. Now, he's going to leave a void that cannot be filled, but on the bright side, Rafa is likely going to remain involved in the sport thanks to his academy, numerous investments, and endorsements. It's been an absolute pleasure, Rafa. You have my utmost respect and admiration. I got to watch you live a few times and even ball boy for you at the US Open, and looking back, I wouldn't trade those moments for anything. But let me ask you guys, what's your favorite Rafa win? Australian Open 2009 or 2022, Wimbledon 2008, or another match that I'm just not even thinking of? I'm eager to know your favorite Rafa memory and just how much it means to you. Be sure to let me know in the comments. I'll be on the road in Texas for the International Team Tennis event in San Antonio in early November, so if you're in the area, be sure to say hi. And for those of you looking for coverage of the Six Kings Slam, unfortunately I didn't get a chance to make a video on it, but we did cover it in our newsletter, so if you haven't subscribed yet, click the link in the description. Until next time, keep going for the lines.